When you're running 5 separate YouTube channels, all driven by automation pipelines, the API costs can become a significant factor. I'm talking about systems that generate hundreds of videos each month, requiring calls to large language models, text-to-speech services, and image generation APIs. For a while, I just saw these as line items on a monthly bill, but I recently sat down to break down the per video cost across all these services. Understanding these unit economics is crucial for sustainability, especially if you're aiming for profitability or scaling. I wanted to know exactly what each minute of audio, each generated image, and each script draft was costing me. This isn't theoretical. This is based on real usage data from the past 3 months, averaging out thousands of API calls. My goal was to identify bottlenecks and understand where I could optimize, or even if the current stack was viable long-term. Let me walk you through the actual numbers I found, broken down by each major service provider. First up, let's talk about Claude. My channels rely heavily on Claude for script generation. I use the Opus model primarily because its context window and reasoning capabilities produce significantly better long-form scripts, especially when I feed it detailed outlines and reference material. A typical video script is around 1,000 to 1,500 words, which translates to roughly 7,000 to 10,000 tokens for the prompt and completion combined. Claude Opus is priced at $15 per million input tokens and $75 per million output tokens. After analyzing my usage, I found that an average video script costs me about $0.65 to $1.10 for the LLM portion. This cost fluctuates based on the complexity of the topic and the amount of iterative refinement I instruct Claude to perform. Sometimes, I'll run a script through a quality gate, which involves another Claude call, adding a small overhead. This is the most expensive single component per video, but it's also the most critical for content quality. Next, the voice. I'm using ElevenLabs professional tier, specifically their custom voice cloning for consistency across my channels. For a standard 1,000-word script, which generally translates to about 5 to 7 minutes of spoken audio, ElevenLabs charges $0.30 per 1,000 characters for their V2 Turbo model. I found that the actual cost for a typical video's narration is around $0.08 to $0.15. This is remarkably efficient. I've optimized my prompts and chunking logic to minimize redundant API calls and ensure I'm only sending clean text for synthesis. My system breaks scripts into smaller segments, synthesizes them, and then concatenates the audio files. This approach also helps manage potential rate limits and makes error handling more granular. The consistency of the voices across hundreds of videos is a huge benefit, and the quality is excellent for the price point. Then there's the visual element. For many of my channels, I generate custom images using Replicate, specifically Stable Diffusion XL or sometimes Flux, for establishing shots or thematic backdrops. Replicate's pricing is consumption-based, often charged per second of GPU time. For a single image generation using SDXL, it typically costs me between $0.005 and $0.02. For a video with, say, 10 unique images, this adds up to about $0.05 to $0.20 per video. I've built a caching layer into my pipeline to avoid regenerating identical images, which helps keep these costs down. If a prompt or a very similar prompt has been used recently, my system will pull from a local cache or a pre-generated image store on Cloudflare R2, significantly reducing API calls. This optimization is crucial because image generation, while cheaper item, can quickly scale if not managed carefully. Beyond the direct content generation, I also have storage and delivery costs. All my generated assets, video files, audio tracks, and images are stored in Cloudflare R2 buckets. R2 offers competitive pricing with zero egress fees, which is a major draw when you're serving up hundreds of gigabytes of video. Storage costs are about $0.015 per GB per month, and operations are $0.0009 per 10,000 reads and $0.0045 per 10,000 writes. For the volume I'm handling across 5 channels, this averages out to a negligible cost per video, usually less than $0.01. I'm talking about hundreds of videos accumulating to a few terabytes, and the monthly R2 bill is still under $10. This makes R2 an incredibly cost-effective solution for media asset management at scale, especially compared to some other cloud providers, where egress fees can quickly eat into your margins. So, let's tally this up. For an average video, which includes script generation via Claude, voiceover via ElevenLabs, and image generation via Replicate, with all assets stored on Cloudflare R2. The breakdown looks something like this. Claude for the script, roughly $0.80, ElevenLabs for the narration, around $0.10, Replicate for images, about $0.10, and Cloudflare R2 storage and operations, practically $0.01. This brings the total per video API cost to approximately $1.01. This is a very precise number based on weighted averages of my actual usage. When you're producing, say, 200 videos a month across all channels, that's about $202 in direct API costs. Add in a small buffer for retries, failed generations, and other minor services, and it pushes it slightly higher, perhaps to $1.15 per video, or about $230 a month. This doesn't include serverless function execution costs, which are minimal on AWS Lambda, but are another line item. Knowing this precise per video cost allows me to make informed decisions about scaling and profitability. If a channel generates an average of $5 per video in ad revenue, then a $1.01 cost leaves a healthy margin. It also highlights where I might look for optimization. For example, if I wanted to cut costs on Claude, I could explore using a cheaper model like Haiku for initial drafts and only use Opus for final refinements, or perhaps experiment with more aggressive prompt engineering to reduce token count. Similarly, if I find myself generating too many images, I might need to refine the visual generation prompts or even explore open-source local models for specific assets, though that adds infrastructure complexity. This level of detail moves beyond just API bill is high to here's exactly why. And here's what each unit of work costs. This kind of cost analysis isn't just about saving money, it's about understanding the true operational expenditure of an automated system. It helps validate the entire business model. If my costs per video were, say, $5 and my revenue per video was only $3, then I'd have a serious problem. The fact that the core API costs are manageable gives me confidence to continue scaling these channels and building more sophisticated automation. I plan to dive deeper into some of the specific optimization techniques I've implemented in a future video, including prompt engineering strategies for Claude and dynamic image caching. If you found this breakdown useful, consider subscribing to Autopilot Dev. I'll be sharing more of these real-world insights from my projects, including a deep dive into my serverless architecture that handles all of this, in an upcoming video. Your support helps me keep these pipelines running and these costs transparent.